Hello, I'm Katie Manning, and I played Jo Grant Jones on Doctor Who. And you're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Go on, darlings, keep collecting.
Larry, it's Fraser. And you use, they all say, who is Doctor Who? Where is he from?
What does he do? They wonder who is Doctor Who? So I ask you, who's Doctor Who?
Welcome back to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, the podcast that explores that wacky world of Doctor Who collecting and all kinds of Doctor Who merchandise. And sometimes we just talk about Doctor Who. Great place to do that. Brought to you in part by Forbidden Planet and Bags Unlimited Incorporated. Welcome back to the show. I am Larry Van Mersbergen, your host, and I have been a Doctor Who collector now since 1981, which makes that 44 years. Lots of experience that I plan to impart to everyone as best I can. Welcome to my 88th episode, celebrating Doctor Who collecting and much more. If you're joining us for the first time, if you have heard this before, you can fast forward here. I opened up one of the first Doctor Who stores in Chicago that exclusively served the Doctor Who fans, and I called it Bundles from Britain. It was back in 1984. We celebrated our 40th anniversary recently at Chicago TARDIS, and were mentioned in a wonderful book called Red, White, and Who, the story of Doctor Who in America. We are on page 384, but you can find a link to buy this book on the front page of our website at drwhocollectors.com. We don't make anything on it. I want the authors to get paid for that work, and all collectors should have a copy. I have a copy within arm's reach of this microphone at all times, because you never know when I need to call on it for anything. We are part of the Direction Point Doctor Who Podcast Network. I've been contacted by some other podcast saying, what's so great about the network? Well, it helps you reach other listeners. You know, if you hear one of our bumpers on this program for another program, it might pique your interest. Then that might get you to listen to that podcast. Or you heard this podcast on another podcast and thought, I'm interested in that. So we're trying to help other podcasters reach an audience. And that's, you know, I've got a pretty good audience out there. Thank you all so much for being a listener. I really appreciate it. We reach both this country and England and Australia and beyond. It's really kind of cool. Anyway, you can find out more at directionpoint.org. And join the ranks of great podcasters such as Time Streams, Police Box in a Junkyard, the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, Traveling the Vortex, Doctor Who Literature, Time Ram, and many more. So for that, just go to directionpoint.org. Speaking of links, of course, I include this on every episode because you don't have to start with the first one. If you want to go back to number 1 and learn about the Dalek book, go right ahead. That's where we started. That's before we had a format, before we had a theme song, anything like that. So there you go. The two links I always include here is make sure you have timelash.com, and when you go there, select TARDIS Library, sign up for a free account. Don't worry, you won't lose your information there. It's a very secure place. You can keep track of your collection, your book collection, vinyl, CDs, videotapes. No magazines, figurines, or toys, though. That's not the place for that. But it's free. So special thanks to my friend Dan O'Malley for keeping that site up and running. If you need to do a deep dive in research, you want to find out more about the Dalek cufflinks or the or things that you're not sure was made, or you wanted more information and you want to go outside that realm, and you need to go to Howe's Transcendental Toy Box. That's drwhotoybox.co.uk. Of course, we're talking about our friend David J. Howe, who is a king collector in his own right. A very good friend of mine and a great resource. Now, if you're looking for Doctor Who items at great prices, look no further than going to drwhostore.com. There you go. It's in the name right there. That is Alien Entertainment. They have what you need, and they're currently running specials on many items. If you live in the Chicago or west suburbs, you can select free location from the Lombard location and save on that shipping if you're in the area. Or you can select a very low-cost shipping method. And, of course, if you do go to the store, browse their incredible selection of Doctor Who and other science fiction items. That location is open Wednesday through Saturday, but phone ahead because it is convention season and they do close down for conventions. They also have a location in Logan Square. So for that, go to alienentertainment.com for locations and store hours. You can get great items right here at our podcast here from Forbidden Planet, one of our sponsors. We teamed up with Forbidden Planet to have their items on our website, and you actually pay them, and we get a little commission. So we thank you for that. We've actually gotten some help, with our hosting, our podcast costs, and that have been met through that sponsorship. We even have the Hatchet Dalek kits. If you don't want to do the subscription, you want to start just buying them and build your Dalek army, one Dalek at a time, then go ahead and go to our website. That's the merchandise links, and you can do that. We also have an eBay store. We just listed a very nice ex-library copy of The Ambassadors of Death in hardcover, which we are about to talk about on this program. But this segment was recorded after I did that program and found a mint copy to replace mine. So this can go to a new home or a great collector's home. And of course, don't forget Who North America. Great folks, Keith and Jenny, amazing folks, and David, their son, also gotta have that. You can find them at whona.com, and of course, we never forget our good friends at the Who Shop in London. And they are listeners to this podcast. So hello, Alex and the gang out there. It's great to have you on the other side of this. And you can find them at thewhoshop.com. In addition, of course, on our website to all the podcasts that are posted, some podcast providers only give you the last 10. We've got all 88. So if you want to go back and listen to an episode, and the most listened episode, I could tell you right now, is my interview with the great Peter Purves, who played Stephen Taylor with the First Doctor. That was a great interview. I've got some other good ones too. Tim Traylor from Big Finish, Sadie Miller, Lauren Cornelius, just some wonderful stuff. And we're going to have some more authors on the program. I've got Alex Storer coming up. Remember, I recently reviewed his book, Evolution of the Toy Dalek. Well, he's going to be on the show to talk about that book and some other projects he's working on. So there you go. In addition to that, of course, we've got a complete guide to the Doctor Who classic hardcover books, which is today's episode focus. And we list all the information that we can find about those books, in addition to the stuff that you hear on the show. So what's going on? Let me start with my home convention here, Chicago TARDIS. They've announced their guests here, which include, and this is accurate as of this taping, Jason Haig-Ellery, he's the CEO of Big Finish, Annette Badland, Mickey Lewis, he's the guy inside the monster costume, great guy, Steph DeWally, I'm looking forward to meeting her. She was the innkeeper on Joy to the World. Sean Carlson, he's on Big Finish. Miles Richardson, who plays the great Irving Braxiatel. Jacqueline King, who played Sylvia Noble. Mickey Lewis, of course. I just mentioned him. Susan Twist, from the recent episode with Sutek Empire of Death. And, of course, Fraser Hines, which comes with your event ticket. All event tickets come with Fraser Hines. And that convention is set for November 28th, 29th, and 30th at the Westin Hotel in Lombard. It's a beautiful hotel right after Thanksgiving. It's a wonderful place to celebrate Doctor Who. Tickets are still available at chicagotardis.com. There are other conventions being announced. Of course, Li Who, which is a friend of the podcast. I know the showrunner very well. I am not able to go to that show due to when it's scheduled. And, of course, Gallifrey One, which is the preeminent convention in the country. Again, the timing of that convention makes it difficult to attend. Next on my list here, I will be attending and a guest at Doctoberfest Regenerate, which is set for Saturday, October 18th, and that'll be at Who North America in Canby, Illinois. I am the first guest, will be announced soon, and my presentation this year will be on Doctor Who toys and games. I'll be bringing the games and toys to talk about. So we'll probably be doing that outside again. And of course, that's, where we are. But no other guests have been announced yet. I am hoping to hear back more. One more thing is Saturday, May 17th, I think it is. Yeah, May 17th. You can join me at the Blue Box Cafe in Elgin for the cosplay congregation. I'll be in Dr. Five. And I believe we'll be filming there for a PBS documentary. So there you go. I'll be doing my interview very soon for that. But that's a wonderful opportunity. Show, it's good food too. Great place. If you are a convention folk and want to have me at your event to present about Doctor Who collecting or anything else, you can contact me about making that a possibility at Doctor Who Collectors Podcast at gmail.com. And that is all I am committed to at the moment. Of course, back to the hardcovers. Many rumors abound about second and third printings by Wingate or WHL, and I'm always on the lookout for concrete proof of the existence of said books. So if you have a book and you're sure that it's an advanced printing other than what we have on our website, contact me. I would love to share this with other people because that could upend an entire group of people who have dedicated to getting every hardcover book in their collection and find that they just need one more. So I love to talk to you about that. I do like talking with collectors. You can share your story here. Contact me if you'd like to be on the show. Doctor Who Collectors Podcast at gmail.com. And Target Books and Target Books. These are the little paperbacks that take up a lot of space in your house. This podcast, we like to, we will buy job lots of targets. We have some money set aside for that. We do tend to pay $2.75 per book, including the shipping. So if you want to get rid of your books, you can just sell them to me and avoid the whole eBay process. If you I would like to see some photos, your list and condition, and we can negotiate from there. If the books are not in great shape, it might be a little bit less, but we're trying to, I fill in whatever's missing from an archive here. We're trying to put an archive together of every printing of every Target book so that we can help out those folks who are doing research. The rest of them we sell and the proceeds help the podcast. So it's a win-win-win-win all the way down the road. On today's show, I'm continuing the coverage that we're doing specifically on those classic hardcovers. We started with 1974 and 1975, and we are now on 1987. And joining me, of course, is my good friend Tony Whitt, who talks about how the stories fare. And his podcast, the Doctor Who Target Book Club, they review each book, and they've been doing it in story order. And of course, I've been covering these books in publication order. And now we've reached a point where I no longer have to wait for them because we've only got 1 year left after this one. 87 is a random collection of stories. 88 only does half the year because the end comes in June of 88. So there you go. So that's today's show. I want to thank our patrons, of course. If you are a patron of Patreon, thank you so much. If you'd like to join those ranks, you can join us at patreon.com/Doctor Who Collectors Podcast all together. And you can support us there at any level. But if you want to see exclusive material that we are not showing to anyone on our TikTok page or wherever, you could have to do the $15 level. And that will put you at a level to help keep us on the air. Thank you. You can also support us at Podbean. We are a Podbean podcast, drwhocollectors.podbean.com, and you can patronize there at any amount. Our theme song is Who's Doctor Who, composed by Barry Mason and Les Reed, performed by Fraser Hines, used with permission. You can hear this podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Podbeam, Spotify, and many more. We're also on Pandora. I said that already. Okay, so Pandora, a Direction Point Network podcast. So we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll go to My Time, our main story on the hardcovers, and of course, the most outrageous offer. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Juliet.
And I'm Nathan.
Experience Doctor Who from the very beginning through a classic fan's eyes. and through the eyes of a new Who fan.
Reminisce and relive those classic moments with Nathan as he offers fun insight.
Or experience them for the first time with Juliet as she dwells on social issues, history, fashion, and the size of a flashlight.
We're the Time Streams Podcast.
Find us on Spotify, Stitcher, or Apple Podcasts. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Traveling the Vortex.
Are you ready to embark on an epic journey through time and space? Join the thousands of Whovians around the world who've discovered Traveling the Vortex, the ultimate Doctor Who podcast for die-hard fans and curious newcomers alike.
Every week, we dive deep into the Whoniverse, discussing the episodes, theories, and hidden gems. We dissect the Doctor's adventures, share behind-the-scenes stories, and explore the legacy of this iconic show.
Traveling the Vortex brings fans together, fostering a global community of Whovians. Whether you're a fan of classic or new Who, there's something for everyone.
Join us on this incredible journey as we unravel the mysteries of time and space.
Don't miss out. Subscribe to Traveling the Vortex today on your favorite podcast platform.
Traveling the Vortex. Your ticket to adventure awaits.
Traveling the Vortex is a proud member of the Direction Point Podcast Network. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
It's my time.
And thank you. Now it's time for my time. I am going to talk about spoilers. So if you have not watched the first 3 new episodes with Ncuti Gatwa, you can skip this section. Just fast forward through it. So my warning's been posted. Anyway, what I want to talk about is how impressed I have been with the season so far. I've really enjoyed the season, and the ones that stand out include Lux and the one we just did with Midnight. Titles are escaping me. I'm working with no notes, so please forgive me. But I've always been a fan of Alan Cumming. I think he's a great actor, great entertainer, good singer, but doing the animated part of that was just so, it seems sinister, because as soon as that laugh came out and the Doctor recognized it, it seems to be a common laugh amongst the gods. So, having the God of Light take over an animated character was something else. And of course, I bet nobody can get that song out of their head. And the most recent episode having to do with Midnight, and of course calling back to a David Tennant story, which I thought was really well done. I think this season is shaping up. I really do. So that's my take on that. And I want to report, another Doctor Who sighting out there. Of course, if you're not fans of the show, Call the Midwife. We've just I just watched episode 4 of the latest season, and Sister Monica Joan, who's a character on there, she's a fan of Doctor Who. It's appeared before, but this time it established when this was, and I'm not sure if the timing is correct, because she hits the TV and John Pertwee is on there doing the eyebrow thing from Spearhead from Space, the prawn of Delphong, where they use their eyebrows, and stuff like that. And I could tell that in those split couple seconds that he was on the screen, but that was shown in January. So the show did not appear to be January, but maybe it was. It was hard. They were wearing coats outside. There was no snow, but I don't know. But anyway, it's a nice Doctor Who sighting outside of the world of Doctor Who, and they had a nice clear image, which I'm yet to get to that box set with John Pertwee. I'm still in the middle of the Color War Games, which I'm enjoying tremendously. I so far haven't, been distracted by the cutting together, but I am enjoying it in color. I've always thought, Patrick Troughton episodes would look good in color, and I think they would have, if especially if the process is done right. And I think they did a really nice job. I do recommend to my collecting friends out there, get yourself, and it's not a lot of money, get yourself an international Blu-ray player so that you don't have to worry about waiting for Amazon US to get these things. And plus you can get the steelbooks and get the nice copies from the UK. As far as I know, there's, as far as the tariff thing, I don't think that's going to be a factor yet. I haven't heard anything about that, but you should still be able to get those Blu-rays from England, and that's you can use your Amazon account. It's amazon.co.uk, and you can go there and use your existing Amazon login to make purchases, and they get here pretty quick. They use DHL usually, and it's a little bit more money, but the other thing you can do, and I just found this out because I've been railing for years for sellers who do not sell to the U.S. So I thought there's got to be a service that's reasonable that I can get a UK address and they'll just forward it to me. Well, I found one. It's called MyUS. Altogether, MYUS. Just go there, Google that, and set up an account. And they give you an address, a UK address, and a suite. And as soon as they get it in-house, I have my payment information tied to them. They calculate the postage and they ship it out. They rebag it. They put it in one more bag and then they send it out. So I have gotten some things through there and they've come here absolutely in perfect shape. And I've been able to use the UK shipping address on certain eBay auctions where they said, sorry, this may not post to the United States. Well, haha, it will now. That's an option. Check it out. I'm not getting paid for them. They're not a sponsor. I'm just telling you what's what. So there we go. The other thing too, let me see. I haven't seen a lot of controversy out there regarding Doctor Who, but I have seen some sellers out there selling stuff for some crazy prices, like World Distributors Doctor Who Special. It was a big, thick book. You can get those pretty inexpensively these days, but somebody was asking £50 for one, and they were getting quite a bit of pushback from the crowd. So I'd say be careful, with prices, and I've seen some crazy prices out there lately. There's still that guy with the last episode's Mask of Mandragora still asking $500 for it. He relisted it, and I'm like, oh, he's never going to get that. And he won't accept any messages, so you can't tell him he won't get it. He's probably turned that off. There's nothing you can do. That just nobody's going to buy it. It's too bad. I'm still working on my Hatchet Dalek kit. Unfortunately, though, my kit 11 came with a broken motor. So I wrote back to Hatchet themselves, and they have not yet responded back. It's been a couple days. So I managed to go through my own store to Forbidden Planet, and I just bought another kit 11. It wasn't that much money, but still, I think they still owe me a rebate on that, and I'm still not happy they haven't responded. So when I went to review them, I put that in there, hoping it will prompt those folks to get on it. But it happens. I mean, one of the wires was loose in the box. And so it's like, it was in a little bag, but that could have happened at any point. And, I want this Dalek to work. So it's the motor that raises and lowers the eye stalk. So it's really kind of cool the way that works. So there you go. Anyway, I'm looking forward to the next episode. I'm looking forward to the next convention. I'm looking forward to, hearing back from my listeners. If you want to give me some feedback or you want to send some information my way, just use that email, DoctorWhoCollectorsPodcast@gmail.com. Somebody asked me, actually, one of the questions I got was, why don't you use your own domain? Well, it costs more money. Through the web host, if I wanted Larry at DoctorWhoCollectorsPodcast.com, DoctorWhoCollectors.com or something, which would be fine, except I got to pay for that. Gmail is free, it's secure, it does virus scanning. I don't have to do that, and it's wonderful. And as far as storage limits and stuff, when I reach that limit, I just dump messages or I archive them somewhere else, and that way, because I don't get a lot of spam there, but it does get filtered and deleted. So there you go. So like I said, any questions you've got, I'm more than happy to answer them. Well, thanks for listening to my time. We're going to take another quick break, and then we're going to go straight to our main story today, which is the coverage of the 1987 classic hardcovers. Stay tuned.
You are invited on an adventure across all of time and space. In a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson,
Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse. On shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
The Vervoids are probably the best dirty joke in Doctor Who.
They're hermaphroditic plants.
A lot of plants are.
So there you go. It's based on science.
No, they'll ship anything.
There are probably 11 and handle shippers out there. You just have to drill a hole where his mouth is, and you're all set.
You know he needs the room. I've seen it in pictures.
I'm not saying you're not a fan. I'm saying you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Doctor Who gives a drunken Doctor Who podcast for the end times.
Up there is the scanner, those are the doors, that is a chair with a panda on it. Sheer poetry, dear boy.
And now it's time for the main story on the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. This is a continuation of our coverage of the classic Doctor Who hardcovers that we've done over several episodes now. We've covered the years 1974 through 1986 with the imprints of Universal Tandem, which include Alan Wingate, Longbow, and W.H. Allen. We start in 1987, where the W.H. Allen imprint is used exclusively, though that is a little kind of suspicious, and I'll explain a little bit later. And of course, it's a year where we have 12 books, one for each month, which is only compared to 11 Target books and 2 companion stories and 1 useless travel guide. Again, a brief history. If you're just catching on for now, you can always listen to the back episodes later, but you do not need to listen to the previous episodes to know what's happening today. Brief history. In 1975, Universal Tandem was sold by a conglomerate named UPD to the other conglomerate, Howard and Wyndham. And that company was renamed Tandem Publications before immediately being merged with the paperback imprints of Howard and Wyndham's general publishing house, W.H. Allen, to become Wyndham Publications Limited in 76. So if you followed that so far, you're doing great. During the 77 and 78 year, the Wyndham identity was phased out. Tandem was completely phased out in 1980, and the surviving titles from that label were put under W.H. Allen's principal paperback imprint, Star Books. The Target imprint survives until 1993, though in its latter years were exclusively used for Doctor Who novelizations. Alan Wingate imprint was retired forever at the end of 77, and W.H. Allen imprint is used until the run ends in June of 1988. Target imprint was officially retired in 1994, but resurrected in 2011 and still used today. Anytime I mention Doctor Who novelizations, I am compelled by the Morocks, Robespierre, the Coquillion, the Vervoids, the Bedeling Monk, and the Ronnie to include our resident Doctor Who novelization expert, the host and producer of the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, a Direction Point Network podcast, the incomparable Professor Tony Whitt. Welcome back, my friend.
Well, thank you for that. Why do you listen to that particular band of critters? Anyway,
I don't know. It was just I was trying to think. This is probably this set of books has to be the most random grouping. And I can explain why. Actually, I found there's some late-breaking developing research that came in on this, and I said now I understand completely why there was this hodgepodge of books that came out, and it continues into the next year when they quit halfway through the year. But anyway, the publication of 12 is nothing special to talk about, but the writing is clearly on the wall that the hardcovers are not profiting the way they should and is impeding the business decisions at W.H. Allen, which actually leads to a bigger event. The last book will be published in June of 1988. These hardcovers are extremely well sought after today, and you might have to steal the secrets of the sleepers that they were protecting in order to sell these off. I know that didn't work for Glitz, but that's the way it goes. Anyway, these books can be found in one of 2 ways. You can find them in ex-library condition, which is pulled or stolen from a library, but not as common in the later years as they were in the earlier years. Not a lot of these books made it to libraries, though one in my collection is an ex-library book. A lot of time, or non-library basically, which is a retail store version, publisher review copy, or other obtained copy that doesn't have any marks in it. No W.H. Allen titles this year were sent to the United States because they were pulled from distribution. However, the bookstores themselves did import them directly from W.H. Allen in London, and I'll explain that in a little bit. So, in 1987, any good memories of that year, Tony?
None. None whatsoever. I'm serious. That was my junior year of high school, so no.
Okay, well, it was my senior year. I've got a few memories of that year, but yeah, I understand completely. But let's take a look at what's happened to Doctor Who in 1987. By early 87, Lionheart declares that Doctor Who is available in over 185 markets across the United States. In March, the newly cast Sylvester McCoy and John Nathan Turner fly to the USA to attend a convention in Atlanta. And this is McCoy's debut appearance as the Seventh Doctor. They do meet up with John Pertwee, who is traveling with the Doctor Who USA tour. That evening, they will all appear on a live broadcast in Atlanta from Mercer University and are interviewed by Eric Luskin. Doctor Who's Celebration and Tour 87-88 brochure proclaiming over 185 U.S. markets, confirming that news. Sadly, on March 28, 1987, the second Doctor, Patrick Troughton, passed away while attending a convention in Columbus, Georgia. I would hate to have been the person to make that announcement.
Mm-hmm.
In May of 1987, having completed filming the debut story Time and the Rani, Sylvester McCoy visits Boston with the Doctor Who USA tour, and the coverage is shown on WGBH. By June of 87, it is reported that Doctor Who is seen by 74% of the country. By September, it announced that over 200 markets have screened the series. However, Lionheart starts hiking up the price for Doctor Who, triggering a backlash that sees a number of PBS stations dropping the series for being too expensive. Now, brace yourselves. By 87, a package of episodes, we don't know how many it was costing over $126,000.
Oh, wow.
I know. And so, of course, in September of 87, the long-running FASA Doctor Who role-playing game is canceled and the license is revoked. In November of 1987, CBS Fox, under its Playhouse Video imprint, begins releasing further Doctor Who stories on home video, both VHS and Betamax. The first titles to be shown are Pyramids of Mars, The Brain of Morbius, and The Robots of Death, which all retail for $19.98 each. In December of 1987, after 20 months on the road, the traveling Doctor Who USA tour makes its final stop in Miami, Florida. If you want to know more about the Doctor Who USA tour, shameless plug here, you're going to see the upcoming video that's being released by Real Time Pictures called Doctor on Display, the USA tour. And you can see me in that video. I do the segment on Chicago. So in 87, basically, I remember for myself, Bundles from Britain was in its almost fourth year of operation. We were still doing well. In fact, one of the quick stories about the USA tour is when they came to Chicago, Gene and I actually made a call and say, hey, we'd like to get a couple of tables. They said, we'll get back to you. And then they never got back to us. In fact, they didn't have any dealers at that USA stop in Chicago. I went down there, I think I went down there with Gene, and we walked around. There were no vendors, no guests, just a table for buying the tour merchandise, the bus, the tour bus, and Bessie.
Goodness.
They couldn't show videos because there was no indoor venue at the time at Navy Pier. And we're guessing no dealers because of the insane amount of taxes that Chicago has on the trade show business. So I'm not sure. We don't know that for sure, but that's probably one thing. But it was not very good. And for the full story about that, got to watch the video. So on to the books, which, after all that information about how 74% of the country is watching Doctor Who, and you can't get a hold of Target books in this country. Right. So that was really something. A handful of Target books got imported to some bookstores and a couple of hardcovers here and there, but not much. By 87, all the Doctor Who hardcovers will be W.H. Allen with laminated covers. And again, none of these books available in the United States. So let's start in 1987, January, with Doctor Who in the Space Museum by Glyn Jones, featuring the red Sutton logo and a black spine, cover by the wonderful David McAllister. 3,000 copies were printed, the price £7.25. Today, that would be close to 18 pounds or $23. This was the only book to be novelized by Mr. Glyn Jones. The reference for the cover photo, the cover of William Hartnell, is from An Unearthly Child. The Dalek on the cover was based on the first Dalek story, The Daleks. And the rocket is Little Joe 2, which was used to test the launch escape system for the Apollo command module. The cover also has David McAllister's trademark Eclipse. The ISBN number inside the Target edition is wrong, and it's actually for the Ark. But speaking of the Eclipse, you see the Eclipse on this book. I'm going to show you the other two covers here that have the Eclipse. You can see it here on the Ark, and you can see it on Time Lash. So that was David McAllister's trademark maneuver. This book is not very hard to find, and you can actually get it right now at DoctorWhoStore.com for $85. There are no ex-library copies that I'm aware of, but just buy it new if you want to get a copy of it. So what were the thoughts on this story, Tony? It's a long time back for you now.
It is, and I think, come to think of it, 1987 may have been the first year that I saw the Hartnell episodes because our local PBS station got them for the first time. So probably not long after this book was published, I saw the Space Museum and was, thoroughly underwhelmed. That was episode
Yes.
15 of our podcast. The tagline for this particular episode was, "This week we discuss anal leakage and the Space Museum, but I repeat myself." And indeed, the scores across the board seem to reflect that. Allison and I both gave it a 1.5, which is unusual. Jenny Fleck was on that episode, formerly Jenny Ingersoll. She gave it a 2.5. And bless his heart, Dalton can see the brightness in anything, generally, and he gave it a 3. But this is early days. And as you'll see when we get further into these episodes, Dalton's scores will start dropping just a little bit. But for this story, for this particular book, he was still willing to give it the benefit of the doubt.
Sounds good to me. And of course, the Space Museum was an odd choice for it to start off the year. Typically, they start off with a new story, but they didn't in this case. This was a rush to get books out in hardcover as quickly as possible because what is happening during this year is W.H. Allen, instead of filing for bankruptcy, they're being sold. And they get purchased by Virgin Publishing.
Aha.
So that is happening during this year. So the plan was make as much money as we can. So what do we have that's ready to go? What can we do that, because news stories were harder to get right away. So they started, that's why this is completely random. Because the next one, we go to February 19th, and we get The Censorites by Nigel Robinson, a cover by Nick Spender. We know 3,000 copies were printed. Nick's cover painting was inspired by a photo from Marco Polo. And by the second month of the year, they raised the price to £7.50. Sales are very weak. So as Virgin Books is in the process of acquiring W.H. Allen, the price increases across the board, including Target Books were up by this point, was to increase short-term revenue and sell off as many assets as possible. So this book was actually listed as the 6th best Target book, according to Doctor Who Magazine 143 in 1988. And it just so happens that I have that magazine right here, the 143 from 1988. So a dramatic reading from the magazine here tells us the Target book poll results. At last, we decided to delay a count on this because of the postal strike, which delayed many people's competition entries, letters, and book poll cards. However, the 87 Target book poll, which began in issue 137, are as follows. Best novel, The Reign of Terror. And down the list, Black Orchid, The Mind Robber, The Faceless Ones, The Massacres, The Censorites, The Romans, The Ambassadors of Death, The Makra Terror, and The Faceless Ones. So there we go. So that's where that was. And not very hard to find. Currently, this is for sale at DoctorWhoStore.com for $95. So it's $10 more than the Space Museum. And this one does have the $7.50 price tag on the back. So again, an old episode for you guys. What was the story like?
Yeah, this is the oldest episode of this set. In fact, episode 7, when we still had Sheena on the program.
Oh, yeah.
And Sheena gave it a very weird score. She said it was either a 3.1 or a 2.9. So make of that what you will. But Dalton and I both gave it a 2.5 because I found it okay. He found it okay. And in fact, as it turned out, he and I watched the first 3 episodes of that story together and then read the book. And he said, given what was promised in those first 3 episodes, the end of it just doesn't deliver. And I think that can be said about the TV story as well.
Yeah, the TV story was very weak, I remember.
It's also notable, though, for having the word goddamn in it. Nigel Robinson was not shy about doing that sort of thing in his books, and sure enough, Ian lets loose with that word, and it shocked us all, and we haven't seen it since.
Well, maybe they said, "Hey, can't do that anymore."
Right.
But somebody got past an editor. I mean, I know that happens because when I was working in the publishing industry, I used to do catalogs for them, and I did this catalog. It actually won an award. And 2 years later, a guy we just hired called me over to his desk and he said, "Hey, did you see this?" And on page 4, this is my boss's newest book. It was supposed to be something in spirituality, and it was spirituality.
Oh dear!
Got past 5 editors.
Oh well, not as bad as the 7th Doctor peeing over a shelf in Delta and the Bannerman.
Right.
So yeah, lots of things were getting past the target editors at this point. So I'm not surprised.
In fact, I'm pretty sure that if there was one editor, it was somebody like, okay, it looks good, let's get it to press. Because there was a rush to get things out. There was a rush to get them to the shops and the distributors. But again, if they had sent half of these to the United States, they might have actually made some money.
Right.
Because nobody could have gotten them. And so we go to March 19th of 1987 with another rare story order publication. 2 stories in a row, is very rare these days, of The Reign of Terror by Ian Marter. Cover by Tony Massaro. This is Ian Marter's first novel of a First Doctor story, but sadly he died right before the publication in October of '86. This was only 2 years after I met Mr. Marter in Chicago, so I was glad I got the opportunity to talk to him. The book was voted best target book in Doctor Who magazine 143 out of 11 titles. And that was the same one I just read, so I'm not going to go back to it. The cover was voted second for the year. So from 2016 until it closed, basically, Tony Massaro's original painting was on display at the Doctor Who exhibition. It is presumed that he still owns it. We have no information. This book is not very hard to find and is currently available at DoctorWhoStore.com for $125. That means they probably have fewer copies of this one in stock. So what do you guys think of The Reign of Terror?
That was episode 8. Sheena gave it a 3.3. I don't know what that girl had with fractions, but there you go.
Yeah, math person.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas Dalton and I gave it fairly high scores. Dalton gave it a 4. He said he was impressed by the historical detail because he's a big buff of the French Revolution. And I gave it a 4.2 for a reason that will become clear when we talk about the rescue.
Okay.
Because that's coming up.
Of course, when I think French Revolution, I always think of The Scarlet Pimpernel, which is a really good book. Okay, Reign of Terror. That takes that out. So we get on to April 16th, 1987, and we get The Romans. So everybody, you're kind of listening, wait, what's all these First Doctor books coming out in 1987? Well, like I said, they're trying to get books that have, or scripts that they had access to and authors that they could get a hold of to get these out quickly. So these were published, boom, 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 one a month. Donald Cotton did this one with a cover by Tony Massaro, 3,000 copies, which is pretty much the deal for all these books. They tried to do at least 3,000. It's dedicated to Anne Wood with Love and Patience. This is Donald Cotton's only book where he adapts somebody else's script, which would be Dennis Spooner. The cover portrait is inspired from a photo taken from an Unearthly Child Radio Times promotion. You can buy Tony Massero's art, by the way, at tony.massero.co.uk. He asked me to include that in the podcast. And so there you go, Tony. Thanks for listening. This book was voted 7th in the same poll in Doctor Who Magazine 143. A large version of this book, cover is available in the book Time Frame by David J. Howe. And I happen to have that book here. I don't know if you own that one, Tony, Time Frame.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, and there's the wonderful cover there for that. And I love this book for that reason. This is the first book to really have larger illustrations of those. It's a wonderful book. And so this book is not hard to find. A lot of these later ones are a lot easier to find than the earlier ones. And they have it at DoctorWhoStore.com for $175. So each price has gone up a little bit. Basically, he's probably got 1 or 2 of these left. I've seen it go for less money on eBay. So shop around if you want to look for this one. And you can find it in new condition. There's no doubt about that. So what did you guys think of the Romans?
That was episode 12. And we all enjoyed it. In fact, I've gone on record as saying Donald Cotton is probably one of my favorite authors in the Doctor Who target line, because his novels are always different than the televised version, and they're always entertaining. The Gunfighters, even more so.
Yes.
This one, Dalton gave it a 3, Allison gave it a 3, which is unusual, and I gave it a 4.5, which is the highest score of all these books that we're doing this time. So yeah, I really enjoyed the Romans. It's one of the few books in this whole group that I would go back to. And I just want to say about that Doctor Who poll,
yes,
the Doctor Who magazine poll, it proves 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
1, fans have never been fond of the historicals.
Yes.
And 2, the readers of Doctor Who magazine back in the 80s were out of their minds.
Yes, they were.
This should have been at the top of the list.
Absolutely. I'm proud to own an unbound proof of Donald Cotton's The Gunfighters that's signed by him and has his editor marks in it and all that. It was a very cool find for the collection, and just nice to have his signature on something, because I know he's no longer with us, sadly. But yeah, I do agree. This is one I read because I tried to read stuff when I was younger. Of course, we did have the Hartnells, so if there was a Hartnell book that came out. And we had a Walden Books local to us that got Target books. They were a little more money in '87. I think it was $6.95 in '87. So because they had to pay import fees and all that, but it was worth it. I do remember reading this one. Okay, now we go completely random here. And May 21st of 1987, we get The Ambassadors of Death by Terrence Dix, with a cover by Tony Massero, 3,000 copies. This will be the final Third Doctor story to be published in both hardcover and paperback, so there are no more after this. This was scheduled originally to be published in 1974, but was shelved due to the very complicated authorship with David Whittaker, Malcolm Hulke, and Trevor Ray, who's uncredited.
Oh, wow.
Wingate, instead of going through that legal nightmare, decided to pass. Which is a shame, because I would have loved to have seen Chris Achilleos do that cover.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have been an amazing cover. This was the last book for Doctor 3. Nigel Robinson had to get permission from John Pertwee for his likeness on the cover, which he granted. The first painting had darker hair, and John Pertwee said, no, you have to make it white, because everybody remembered me for my white hair. So it was supposed to be, in the first season, his hair was a little darker. So that's why he went that route. And I don't know if the original painting exists anywhere. I've tried to find it, but I haven't seen it. This was the 8th best book voted in that same poll from that same magazine. The Target book was printed also with a reprint of the Auton Invasion to try to boost the sale point. So they did another reprinting of that book to go with this one. This did not get the usual paired video release at the time, also for the same authorship reasons. So it will be released much later. After I think after everybody was gone, they were able to work with lawyers easier than working with the people. This book is generally not hard to find. Doctor Who Store does not have any copies, but I've seen it average for about $150 in new condition. This particular copy happens to be an ex-library copy that I've had for a long time. I didn't pay much for it. I think I paid $10 for it when I got it, but still, it's not in bad shape, and a good reading copy. So this is a little further ahead, but still far behind for you.
Yep.
How'd you guys like the Ambassadors of Death?
That would have been episode 52, and we didn't. Dalton gave it a 2.5, which is still high for him, but actually, no, it's kind of low for him, in fact, 2.5 at this point. Allison gave it a 1.5. I gave it a 1.
Okay.
And the main thing I remember from listening to that episode was, we've all had better dicks than this. And it's absolutely true. In fact, if Terrence Dicks had been given a crack at this book in 1974, he would still have cared about it.
Yes, absolutely.
At this point, absolutely not. And if I did not know it was re-released alongside the Auton Invasion.
Yes.
And if that's the case, you can just look at those two books and see the night and day between them because, yeah, Terrence Dicks is kind of checked out on this one.
Yeah, because Auton Invasion was written, that was the first one written in 74.
Yep, and it is beautiful.
It's a great book. Yeah, it's a well-written book. And this one would have been a great one to see how he would have tackled it if Wingate did decide to untangle that mess and put it out. They were supposed to also do the Doomsday Weapon and one more, and that also got shelved for whatever reason. But that's why, if you remember back, everybody, when I did 74 and 75 in one episode because they only did 2 books in 74 and 2 books in 75. So that was, they didn't get hardcovers for all the paperbacks. Like, for instance, the Zarbi never gets a hardback treatment, or and the Crusaders came out much later, and Doctor Who and the Daleks didn't get this either. So there was that. I think there were other issues there was other copyrights held, but absolutely. So that's the Ambassadors of Death. And I need to turn the page. Folks at home, you know that this work from scripts. On June 18th of 1987, we get The Massacre, going back to the first Doctor. John Lucarati with a cover by Tony Massaro, 3,000 copies. John's original script was completely written by Donald Tosh and was very reluctant to novelize a book he technically didn't write. The book omits the screen ending of Dodo Chaplet meeting in the future. It also has a 52-word author's note. The cover was inspired by the same photo that Nick Spender used for the Sensorites. That was, and that was from Marco Polo. So 2 issues of Doctor Who magazine, 88 and 91, both reported that this book would be published in 1985. So I went back through the archives and I did find issue number 88. It has somebody's name written on it. I must have bought this used. But it does have, thank goodness for post-it notes here. A month, let's see here. Yes, a month later, Peter Grimwade's Planet of Fire novel will be released, followed by Terrence Dicks' adaptation of the home story Caves of Androzani. We leave Peter Davison for a month to be drawn to the era with John Lucarati's Marco Polo. And in the new year, we'll bring Eric Pringle's The Awakening, The Mind of Evil, The Crotons, and The Massacre. So there we go. And that didn't happen. So this is where Doctor Who Magazine number 1 gets it wrong. And then we go to issue number 91. So just a few issues later, they confirm the same story. About, it says here, in no particular order, Eric Pringle has novelized The Awakening, The Twin Dilemma, The Crotons, and John Lucarati will be doing The Massacre to follow up Marco Polo and the Aztecs. So, and of course, they also announced The Mythmakers, The Gunfighters Will Have to Wait, which it did. Ian Martyr handling the invasion. So they were right about just about anything. But of course, this is the information they were given back during this time. But obviously something happened, and we don't know what happened to delay it this far or how long, but the magazines were absolutely correct. And the information that I was able to gather was in one spot. So I give kudos to whoever it was that did all this research and read every Doctor Who magazine to find that, because I had to go through the magazine a few times to find it. Both, like I said, it says that the likely delay, according to one source, is that Luke Arati was negotiating a deal based on authorship. Now, going back to the 143 magazine, if you remember, folks, that's this one here. It was voted third for the year. So when it finally came out, it was the third best book. The cover was also issued as a postcard that was free with Doctor Who magazine 214. I did not have that in my collection, but I'm going to see if I can find one. I would love to have a postcard of this if it's still there. This book is not very hard to find, and it is available at DoctorWhoStore.com for $125. Get it today. Get it fast. That about goes for new condition, and this book is in new condition. In fact, it's still got that tight spine. I don't want to open the book too far. What did you guys think of the massacre, Tony?
This is an unusual one for a couple of reasons. Episode 21. Jenny and Allison joined me for that one, but Dalton, for some reason, didn't. I can't remember now what it was that kept him from being on the episode, but Jenny gave it a 2. Allison gave it a 1. I gave it a 4, and I need to explain why that is.
Okay.
Mainly because this is the only John Luca Arati novelization I like. I actually don't care for any of his other novelizations. This one, however, I think because he is novelizing someone else's work, it frees him up a little bit, and he's able to play with the prose a little bit. That prologue is highly unusual because it's the, I believe, only time the Time Lords actually make an appearance in the Hartnell era on the page.
Yes, I think you're right.
It is very strange. But it is entertaining, and it is completely, and I mean completely, different than the televised story.
And I also want to note real quick that it has a dramatis personae on the first page.
It does indeed.
Yeah, so it has all your cast of characters, the Catholics, the Huguenots, and Charles IX. So yeah, it is a little unusual.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of needed, though. There's a cast of thousands in that particular story. But yeah, I appreciated it. They, not so much.
Okay. Absolutely. So, like I said, so there you go. Now, I want to point out, too, that on the back of each of the book, it does say distributed by Lyle Stewart. They had that template set because they have figured that Lyle Stewart was going to forever be doing this. And then when they pulled out in 1986, they stopped selling them, but they kept printing it. And sometimes and by the way, if you find a book with a Lyle Stewart price tag on it, they put those on in London. They don't get put on here. They're automatically applied. So that's how they did business back then. But yeah, unfortunately, and we know Lyle Stewart, they last a couple more years, and he's had if you want to know more about Lyle Stewart, look at his Wikipedia page, because he's quite a character.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so we get to the mid-July 1987 here. So at this point, I'm an official high school graduate at this point. So I've finished high school, which was wonderful to get that out of the way. And we get The Makra Terror by Ian Stewart Black, and a cover by Tony Massaro, 3,000 copies printed, and a third price increase to £7.95. We need more money, more money. This would be the final price increase until the hardcovers completely shut down in June of '88. Although, if they had planned to continue, they had a proof. I seen a proof cover. Paradise Towers was supposed to be produced in July of '88, but of course they cut it off after June, so that book didn't get done. So unfortunately, Sylvester only gets one hardcover, which we will get to shortly. They would have actually raised the price then to £8.95 if they had done that book. So they were there at that point. That was it. I've seen proofs of that. I'll post pictures of that on the website because they were sent to me by Mr. Colin Young. So he's got quite a bit of collectibles in that area, and including some hardcover proofs. This book was dedicated to the Doctor Who Appreciation Society, who I was a member of that group for many years. No production photos that were good enough to inspire Tony Massaro, so he used a real crab for the cover. And I think Fraser Hines would say, well, that's a better looking one than the one we had.
Right.
And of course, just a quick plug, you can also meet Fraser Hines at Chicago TARDIS. He's there every year, except, if he has a thing, but he's on the schedule to be there. The ISBN in the Target edition is also wrong, and also for the ARC. So that's 2 books with the same ISBN number for the wrong book. I tell you, they're rushing to press. Voted 9th best Target book in that same Doctor Who magazine 143. I did mention of course this episode has been animated, and I spoke with Fraser Hines, and he said that the Makra and the animation were like 100 times better than those stupid props they worked with on the show. This book is not very hard to find. It is at DoctorWhoStore.com from $145. I've seen it go as high as $300 on eBay. All in new condition. This book is in new condition. So get them fast before they're gone. Apparently it's a popular one, second Doctor novel. So what did you guys think of the Makra Terror?
As little as possible. That was episode 33. Trey Corte was with us on that one.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Yep. Yeah. He gave it a 1. I gave it a 1. Jenny gave it a 1.5, and Dalton, of all people, gave it a 1.5. And I have to quote something that he said.
Sure.
When he gave his score, he said, I knew you were in trouble when I looked at your notes. You've written longer notes for books that were just as bad. This is 6 pages of notes from Tony Whitt. There is nothing in this book to talk about. He's not wrong.
Yeah, I have to agree. And even so, any Doctor Who story that has a marching band.
Well, that's not the necessarily bad part. It's just that Ian Stewart Black doesn't know how to novelize his own stories. We're going to run into that again with the Savages.
Yes, unfortunately. And speaking of which, I just got done watching the Savages animation, and it's really good.
I'm looking forward to that.
It's a good story. It's a good, solid Doctor Who story. And just of course, with the original voices and all that, the animation's actually very good. So I was very pleased to see that. Just finished that the other day. All right, so that's the Makra Terror. So if you're going to buy it, apparently it's a collectible book if it's running for $300 in hardcover. But that's crazy. August 20th, 1987, we get The Rescue by Ian Marter with a cover by Tony Clark, not Tony Massaro this time. 3,000 copies printed, and Ian Marter died just after completing this book. This was his last work. Nigel Robinson did the final edits, and he added a dedication to the memory of Ian Marter in the book. Tony Clark, who is a longtime fan of Doctor Who, had submitted many unsolicited cover ideas to W.H. Allen before finally getting a commission for this one. The reference photo on the cover is from Marco Polo, and this is the first book to say published by arrangement with BBC Enterprises Limited and not BBC Television. There was a change in structure. The hardcover has no contents page. This book is not hard to find, not at DoctorWhoStore.com, sadly, but I've seen it between 100 and 150 in new condition. And this book is in new condition. So since the Coquillian called you here, what do you guys think of The Rescue?
This is episode 11, and Dalton and Allison agreed on this one. They both gave it a 3. Allison actually said for her that was extremely high praise, even though she has scored lesser books better since then. And I gave it a 4.25. I'm not quite sure why I didn't give it a 4.5, because I said at the time it was Ian Marter at his best. It's also Ian Marter Unchained, because I have a story from Nigel Robinson when I interviewed him for the podcast.
Sure.
There is, in the prologue of this book, a 69 joke.
Oh.
And it was deliberate on the part of Ian Marter. And in fact, it was the beginning of a longer disquisition on that particular practice. Ian Marter wanted to put it in the book. And Nigel Robinson said, you do realize it's teenagers reading these books, right? And essentially told him to take it out. But the initial joke is still in there. So as we say in 2025, whenever we see that number, nice.
Of course, there were teenagers at this time period that's going, what does that mean? Because we were still without internet back then.
Yes. Ian Marter was a sick man.
I had a 10-minute conversation with him in 1984, and I remember he was very funny. He was very friendly. He was just interested in, asked me about me. He was like, oh, what do you do? What's all that? Oh, this is great. I love this city, and he was just so excited to be in Chicago. Yeah. And it just kind of left me with a good feeling that, when I found out later he passed away, I thought, well, I'm glad I got to meet him. I mean, I could not afford photographs or autographs back then, but it was just nice to run into them because they were often in the lobby just kind of hanging out, and it's like, hey, do you mind if I talk? No, hey, sit down and talk to me. It's kind of like that at Chicago TARDIS now. If they're sitting out in the lobby, and they're not on their phone or anything, they're usually happy to talk. So that was a pretty cool thing. All right, the last Ian Marter novel. So now we go to September 17th of 1987. That's 6 days after my 17th birthday. So I graduated high school very young. Oh, actually, no, that would be my 18th birthday. Excuse me.
I was about to say, yeah.
Yeah, I graduated. I was 17 when I graduated, turned 18 my fall semester in college. So we get Terror of the Vervoids by Pip and Jane Baker.
Sorry.
Yeah, with a cover by Tony Massaro, who I'd like to have a word with about this one. 3,000 copies printed. This book has no contents page, and there are no other notes on this book for the publication, but how random is this publication year? Oh my gosh, we just went from The Rescue to Terror of the Vervoids. This book is not very hard to find, but believe it or not, I looked out there. The average price of this book in new condition is $275, and this is an ex-library copy. In fact, it still has the little card in there.
Oh, wow.
Of who checked this out last. It was last checked out in 1994. So checked out once. Probably they looked at the cover and said, put that book down. Oh, my goodness. So this is not, I actually remember listening to this episode, but I can't wait to hear you talk about it because I know how much you guys really don't love Pip and Jane Baker.
No, we're honestly not. That was episode 171. Matthew Kressel actually joined us on this one.
Oh, yes, I do remember that one. Yeah, Matthew's great. Yeah.
He and I both gave it a 1.5. Dalton gave it a 2 because Dalton is sweet. And Allison gave it a 2.5 because, as she puts it, she does not have the animus towards the Bakers that Dalton and I have.
Okay.
Which should give you a preview of what we're going to do to Time in the Ronnie.
Right.
But,
right.
Yeah. By the way, before we get to Mysterious Planet, I just want to point out an oddity of the fact that they shut down the hardcovers when they did. What that means is that that all of the books of Trial of the Time Lord get a hardcover release except for The Ultimate Foe.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, they did not get to go on. In fact, the paperbacks, I know it came out in paperback.
Yes.
But the paperback run towards the end was one of those things where the books started coming out of Virgin using the Target imprint, and that was something that was still under negotiation. And eventually they had to kind of come to an agreement on how they were going to produce their books, because the books did get a little different in the 90s. And then when they went to the Blue Spines, obviously the idea was they were going to reprint every book on Blue Spine, but they didn't get that opportunity because they got their license pulled. So that was the end of that. But I also want to point out that on the book, there's a little blue corner here. It says Trial of a Time Lord. And occasionally they do these things on the front cover, and they're going to do that for another one, which is also kind of ridiculous, but I'll point it out when we get to it. But this is interesting. This was in the Newtonbury Community High School Library. So this was in a high school.
Oh, God.
I know.
Oh, no wonder it wasn't checked out. They were probably embarrassed by the content.
I was like, was there a name here of the person who checked it out? No, just a library number, a
Oh
barcode
no,
number.
they'd want to remain anonymous even after all these years.
I'm gonna read the name of so and so checked out this book. Oh my God, he mentioned that on the podcast. Yeah, I know it's just crazy stuff. Oh my gosh. So yeah, there we go. October 15th, 1987, we get The Time Meddler by Nigel Robinson with a cover by Jeff Koomans. Slightly different artwork. Jeff, I talked to Jeff the other day, and he's just the nicest guy. Has a different style. 3,000 copies printed, and he hasn't painted a cover, by the way, since 1979. And this would be his final cover for the Target range. He will contribute cover art for the New Adventures, of course. There's not much to talk about this publication except that it came out. The book is not hard to find, and is that you can find it at Doctor Who store for $85. It's one of the cheaper ones, so he must have 1,000 of them sitting in the warehouse. So anyway, this one goes back to the First Doctor. A lot of First Doctor this year, but what do you guys think of The Time Meddler?
That was episode 17. Dalton gave it a 3, and Allison and I both gave it a 2.5. And I'm trying to remember why. I think it's because by that point we were getting kind of tired of historicals. Even though that one doesn't really count as a historical if you think about it.
Kind of, the Battle of Hastings, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's but still, my favorite line in all of Doctor Who is, "What do you think it is? A space helmet for a cow?"
Right.
I got to say that line when I did my interview with Peter Purvis. I said, "Okay, so what did you think the first time you heard that?" He was like, "It took 3 takes. I was laughing."
I think he got rid of the line that there is a chair with a panda on it, which is my favorite line from that story.
I use that to introduce the segment.
Right.
I love that. That is a chair over there. That is there's a chair with a panda on it. Chair poetry, dear boy. I love it. That's really funny. But oh gosh. So I'm sorry. You go on.
No, that's all I had to say.
Well, that's all I had. Okay.
It's not in the novelization for some reason. And when I interviewed Nigel Robinson, I asked him about that particular scene in the televised version that leaves the reader very uncomfortable. And it also leaves you uncomfortable in the book because he kind of makes it explicit what has happened. It's unusual for any Doctor Who media to get that far into that direction, especially in the 60s and even in the 80s.
True. I also think this is one of the more sinister things the Doctor does to one of his enemies, is strands him in 1066.
It doesn't work, though.
No, he eventually gets out. We don't know how he gets out, but I'm sure, he has a lot of time to figure out, how to rewire the little TARDIS to get it back to where it was supposed to be. But
somehow Palpatine survived.
That's true. But I just want to also point out that you notice that the picture on the cover does not resemble Peter Butterworth.
No.
So my guess is, I don't know if he was still alive at this point, but they are very careful not to get too close, because I think I mentioned in our last episode that they painted an actor so close they had to get an agreement. And that's, so I think they're trying to be careful not to spend too much money, because they're trying to sell off assets. They're trying to get rid of stuff, the office chairs, the pens and all that. Also, a lot of the information that is missing from the Target book is because they did get rid of a lot of files. So there's not a lot of information available. They had more information on the New Adventures because that company kept everything. So very interesting how that goes. The Time Meddler. And so now we get to November 19th, 1987, the anniversary of the show coming up in a few days. We get The Mysterious Planet by Terrence Dix with a cover by Tony Massaro, 3,000 copies printed. Robert Holmes was approached to write this, but he died before he could. The character Broken Tooth is mistakenly referred to in here as Broken Nose. This book was published out of story order, possibly since the scripts didn't have the Trial of a Time Lord umbrella yet. Trial of a Time Lord is written on the front cover. This book is given basically on the Target book. It is number 126. but it says 127 on it, so it's wrong. 127 is the Time Meddler. So I know I have these in publication order, and they have the same number on the spine. So much for that numbering system. A larger version of this cover can be seen in Time Frame by David J. Howe, and it is not very hard to find. You can currently get this at DoctorWhoStore.com for $95. This is a very recent one for you, Tony. So what did you guys think?
Yes, this was episode 169. Nice. And we were very sad that it was the last Dicks we would be getting for a very long while. God, the double entendres just write themselves for this one.
They do.
But in this particular case, it's the last Terrence Dicks Target novelization we'll get. It's not the last Terrence Dicks novelization we will get.
That's correct. That is correct.
Because we will be talking at some point soon about that Sontaran thing that he wrote that he then novelized for Virgin. But the scores were actually pretty high for this one. Dalton and I both gave it a 3.5, and Allison gave it a 3. It's not a great book, but it's certainly better than just about anything else Dicks was producing at the time, because, as we all know, Robert Holmes was a very good friend of his, and he was trying his damnedest to do his best by his friend, who had, by that point, passed away.
Yes, that is true. That is true. Also, on the back cover, you get the Time Lord logo. And you still get, and with the $7.95 price tag on it. And this book is a new condition book, but you can still find these. These aren't too hard to find. So there you go. That's The Mysterious Planet. We get to December 17th, 1987, closing in on Christmas time and closing out a dismal sales year with, let's celebrate it by doing the one and only Sylvester McCoy story to make the hardcover roster, Time and the Rani by Pip and Jane Baker, with a cover photograph by Chris Capstick. 3,000 copies printed. This is the first hardcover to use the Elms, or what we call the McCoy logo. The Sutton logo will come back because some of the books that were printed in 86 were delayed, or 87 were delayed for 1988, which is why there was a couple intermixed there. You'll see the Sutton logo, then you'll see this logo, then the Sutton logo again for 2 more, and then this one again. It's really unusual. When we do 88, folks, that's the year that the walls come down, and that's it. The office is being moved somewhere else, and a very young David J. Howe will be working at the new company, by the way. So that is kind of cool. The Target library gives this a number of 128, but it also says 127 on the book. So that's the third one with 127 on the corner. So if any of you guys are doing your Targets in number order, I would abandon that practice immediately and either go story order or publication order, but forget that Target library. That is a mess and a half. I even say on my script says this was a stupid numbering system.
Yes.
I am not wrong. This is the only Sylvester McCoy story to be published in hardcover, and I'll have to get him to sign it at some point. Tony Massaro was supposed to do the art for the cover, but his painting had the Tetrap sleeping, but not upside down. And so J&T rejected the cover. He still had, his claws into the company there. And they didn't allow for a redo, so they used a photo instead. This is the first photo cover since the Peter Davison stories. The photo was supposed to be on the cover of Radio Times, but they rejected it too. The Sutton logo was on Massaro's painting, but J&T decided it was time to use the new logo. So that was another contract they had to do with Elmas, who designed the logo, so that he could get paid for that. The book also, for some whatever reason, says first edition on the cover, though no second printing will ever come. And
so technically it's right.
It is correct. But I'm like, I love sellers out there that sell this. It's a first printing. I said, it's the only printing. The last second printing was in 1985, and that was at the behest of John Nathan Turner. And before that, I think it was the Space War back in 1978. So this book has no contents page like many of the others. I think they just went ahead and said, who's looking at that anyway? The book, they would not sell many of these, and none of these were sold in the United States until much later. My book is in new condition. So it's possible that some stock was destroyed at the end of the year. That makes, there's a rumor that of the 3,000 books, maybe only 1,500 survived, because it wouldn't surprise me that they couldn't get rid of assets fast enough by the end of the year that some of them got, whoops, oh, that pallet fell in the incinerator, that kind of thing. So that's a rumor. We don't know for sure, and no one can testify to either of that stuff. So please take that with a grain of salt and do not bombard me on social media, which you're going to do anyway. I know
Yes.
it happens every time. Every time I say something, it's like, you, how dare you say that about Time in the Running? I'm like, okay, whatever, guys. That's like, fine. Listen, don't listen. It's okay. So this was one of the latest episodes for you as well. You guys just finished, you guys just started the McCoy run.
Yes.
So, so tell us about this one.
Oh, just wait for the bombardment on this one, Larry.
Oh, I bet.
Yes. This was
Here we go.
episode 173 for us. And on our program, we don't refer to the logo in the way you do, Larry. But since you have a family-friendly podcast, I can't tell you how we refer to the logo on the podcast. You'll just have to listen and find out. But it's not kind.
Okay.
Dalton was very kind to this book. He gave it a 2.5, but that's low for him. Allison, who's normally okay with the Bakers, gave this a 1.5. And both Trey Corte and I gave it a 1 because we were not amused. In fact, Trey actually at one point said, "This book disappointed me when I was 12. It has not ceased to do so." It does have its problems, including defining for an audience of readers who presumably already know the answer already what a hologram is. Yeah, they took the mandate to educate their readers just a little too far, the Bakers.
That's a shame.
It really is.
Yeah. This is one I never read because I saw the story and I didn't get the Target book until much later, but I didn't bother to read it. But
You're missing nothing.
When I listened to your podcast, I'm like, that's one I'm not picking up.
Right.
It's a shame, but like I said, if you're out there, if you're the hardcore collector, like some of us are, and you really want to find a copy of this in hardcover, you can. Like I said, $150 is not bad for for this book in new condition. If you're just getting it for that, if you want to read one, find one for $1.50 and don't read it.
Or even better, buy the audiobook.
Yes.
Because Bonnie Langford's performance is amazing, especially when she's doing the Ronnie doing her.
Oh.
It is a thing of beauty. I adore Bonnie Langford.
Oh, I got to get that now. I don't know if I have that on the shelf, but I'll have to find it because I do got to hear that.
It's amazing.
Bonnie Langford. I wish they would get her to come over here, but
me too.
She's hard to book. In fact, no, I had a conversation with Taylor Deffridge online the other day, and I said, "Hey, what about Alan Cumming?" And she goes, "Do you know how ridiculously expensive he is?"
Right.
The guy, he's on The Good Wife, for God's sakes. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it because that song has been in my head for weeks.
Thank you.
but that was definitely a breath of fresh air. But anyway, so that was the final book and the final book of 87 and the only Sylvester McCoy book to get published. If you thought this year was random and out of control, the last 6 books that come out next year will kind of seal the coffin on the hardcover line. Sales are continuing to decline. Collectors turn up to buy these, but not enough to turn around the deficit. W.H. Allen was sold to Virgin during this year, and Allen tried to liquidate assets quickly. So the hardcover run will run to an end. They published some of the books that were coming out in 88 were done in 87 and withheld from being made until they could get into the new year and quietly get rid of them. So unfortunately, that does it for that. Takes care of the 1987 books. If you want a set of these, a full set, it's not impossible. I have a complete set myself, and most of them are in mint. 2 of them are library. But to own a set of these books, I have, based on estimated average prices, the whole set would cost you $1,655, which is significantly less than if you wanted a 78 set, which I don't have. And some of those, Loch Ness Monster is going for $1,200. That's the last one that's sold. So that would be almost one book and a few others. So my advice, of course, to all you collectors out there is to shop around, negotiate. If they offer you, if you're on that eBay site, which a lot of people like to use, sometimes you can make an offer. And if you make a reasonable offer, sometimes they'll be like, yep, I had this thing up here for years. I'll let it go. You might get a good deal. Be aware of higher priced auctions that are way ridiculous. There's a gentleman on eBay who's been selling the same Brain of Morbius signed by Terrence Dix for a year and a half now, and has had it at the same ridiculously high price. And you can't contact him. I tried to. Said, this seller's not taking questions. And I said, okay, I was just trying to help him out, but you just kind of have to watch. And I don't think he's going to sell his copy anytime soon. You might be able to find some of these titles at Abe's Used Books, Books A Million, and other or half-price books. In some places have hardcover books, because most of those hardcover books were imported by the bookstores themselves. You might get lucky on eBay, but beware of price gouging. Watch the Facebook groups, and some of my respected sellers are Dale Santos, Jonathan Ruffle, Luke Ashby, and David Russell. You can also find some new copies at DoctorWhoStore.com. If you log on to there, select books, and he's got a link directly to W.H. Allen hardcovers. And all of those books are in new condition. Some of them date back to the bundles days. Sometimes you can find them at Who North America, but none in stock as of this taping, but keep checking back. My special thanks to my friend Tony Whitt here, the host and producer of the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, available on SoundCloud and many providers, including Direction Point, a Doctor Who podcast network. So what's coming up next for you guys?
Oh, goodness. We just finished recording Delta and the Bannerman, which is being edited at the moment. And spoiler alert, that was an interesting one to discuss. And we're going to be discussing Dragonfire in about a week and a half.
So we got the 50s rock and roll and the introduction of Ace.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll do something completely different.
Can't wait for that. That's good. Yeah, please do tune in to that podcast. If you're listening to mine, you should be listening to that one, because I do. And I put that on the first shuffle whenever it comes out. We unfortunately we'll be wrapping up this segment in a few weeks or a month here for the final episode covering the classic hardcovers of 1988 with Tony Whitt, and that only lasts 6 months, so it'll be a much shorter episode. But don't worry, Tony's not going away. We'll probably find another project to work together on in the future. I'm sure of that, my friend.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, in 1988, just a little spoiler, only one of the books in 1988 got distributed in the United States by an independent book distributor. And I'll tell you about that later, because some of those are still floating around. Follow us on Instagram at Doctor Who Collectors to see full art of the covers. Follow me on TikTok at DoctorWhoCollectors.com for a virtual tour of the Who collection in this room. And it bleeds outside the room, too, because there's not enough space in here to get it all. You can also watch this episode on Patreon with a $10 subscription. If you have any photos or books or proof of life of books that we've not mentioned on this show or missing from my online hardcover guide at DoctorWhoCollectors.com, please email me at DoctorWhoCollectorsPodcast@gmail.com with hardcover photos in the subject line, and please include photos of the spine, the cover, and the copyright page. Thanks once again for being here, Tony.
Thank you for having me.
And listeners, please stay tuned for the most outrageous offer.
We are going on a journey, a very long journey, through the world of the Target novelizations in publication order. Every week, we are looking at a new book, talking about Terrence Dix, Malcolm Hulke, and all our Doctor Who novelization friends. Whatever you do, keep turning the pages. This is Jason Miller of the Doctor Who Literature Podcast, a member of the Direction Point Podcast Network, and you are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club Podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Allison Fitz-Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast on the Direction Point Podcast Network. Keep collecting.
In all my travelings throughout the universe, I have battled against evil, against power-mad conspirators. I should have stayed here. The oldest civilization. Decadent, degenerate, and rotten to the core. Power-mad conspirators, Daleks, Sontarans, Cybermen. They're still in the nursery compared to us. 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to be really corrupt.
And now it's time for the most outrageous offer. This is a Doctor Who item or Doctor Who related item that appears to be priced way above where it should be. Or way above where it should be. Depends. All right, so here's what we got. There was a Blu-ray released in 2014. It's Dark Water and Death in Heaven 3D. So I believe this is a PAL release. Might be, I'm trying to see. Yep, it's a PAL release. It looks like 3D adventure now in 3D. Okay, so I've got a seller here on eBay, the Old Game Shack with pretty 95.6 positive review. So pretty good, located in California. So this might be an actual USA release. Anyway, he's asking $999.99. And it looks like a shipping cost of free economy shipping. So at least you got that. So $1,000 for this Blu-ray, sealed. So I went around to see if there were other copies. Now, does it matter that it's sealed? Actually, well, yeah. Here's a brand new one. I found another one that was completely sealed, same exact thing, for $20 at a place called Plaid's Soapbox. 100% positive. Has a $4.63 thing. We're actually going to go ahead and buy it ourselves here and make sure that it works. But what a crazy deal here. It's just I've not seen a thing go that high. I mean, why would you charge that much? You know, it's just absolutely crazy that would be the case. So we're gonna go ahead and get that. Yeah, total with shipping $26.65. So we're going to go ahead and get that. We'll report on that when it comes. Maybe I need to get 3D glasses to go with it. So there we go. I found it for a very a varied amount of prices. As far as not lots of for there's another one for $12. There's another one for $14. Some of these are not sealed; they're used, but that's okay. I mean, you don't have to pay $1,000 for this particular Blu-ray. So there you go. That does seem crazy. And I will post that link and a screenshot on my website in case they decide to play around with the price later. And there you go. Thanks for that. That was one that came in anonymously. Thank you for my listeners for finding these. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. I love seeing these. I do the research. Now, sometimes you might find an item that seems a bit high, but then again, it might be the only one. And just to follow up on a previous episode, our $2,000 Matt Smith annual is still for sale on eBay for that same price. I still think it's a mistake, but there you go. Some people don't learn, but that's all right. Anyway, that wraps up the most outrageous offer, and that wraps up the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Thank you for listening to our 88th episode. I want to thank my special guest, Mr. Tony Whitt. He's the host of the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast. You can have that podcast on SoundCloud as well as other podcast providers, and they're in the Sylvester McCoy era right now. So, what's happening on the future episodes? Well, we've got some authors coming on. We've got some reviews coming in. So, there you go. So, thank you for listening. And until then, keep collecting.
A Doctor Who Podcast Network.